The twin moons hung high in the alien sky, casting a silver glow over the quiet village. For hours, the streets had been empty. Only the soft hum of night insects breaking the silence. But that peace shattered when a scream cut through the air. Sharp and full of terror. Doors slammed, windows shut, and shadows moved quickly behind locked walls. An alien mother ran barefoot down the main path, her long hair tangled, her breath broken with panic. Her skin, pale violet under the moonlight, was smeared with dirt, and her wide golden eyes searched desperately. She called out for help, her voice breaking. "Please, my children, someone took my children." No one answered behind the safety of wooden shutters. Villagers whispered to each other, too afraid to open their doors. They all knew what had happened, the same thing that had happened to others before. The forest beyond the village was home to monsters, hundreds of them, and when they came for someone, there was no getting them back. The mother stumbled to her knees in the dirt, her hands shaking. "They're only 7 years old," she cried. "Twins. My whole world. Please help me." But still, no one stepped forward. Some looked away in shame. Others closed their ears to her pleas. It wasn't cruelty, was fear. No one who went into that forest ever returned. A sound of boots on stone made her head. Snap up, from the far end of the street, a figure walked toward her. He was taller than most in the village, his broad shoulders wrapped in a dusty cloak. His skin was human light brown, weathered by sun and wind. Across his back was a rifle, and at his side a blade in a worn leather sheath. His eyes, dark and steady, didn't flinch at her tears. He stopped in front of her and spoke in a calm voice. "Tell me where they took them." The mother blinked, almost too stunned to answer. "You? You don't understand," she said. "There are more than 300 of them monsters. Claws, teeth, they tear apart anyone who enters." The human didn't look away, didn't step back. Instead, he checked the strap on his rifle and shifted the blade at his side. "I understand," he said quietly. "Tell me where." Her voice trembled as she pointed toward the dark line of trees beyond the last houses. "The old ruins, in the heart of the forest, that's where they take the captives." The human gave a single nod. Then he started walking toward the forest without another word. "Wait," she called after him. "Why?" "You don't even know us." He paused, looking over his shoulder. "I don't have to," he replied. Before disappearing into the night, the path to the forest was overgrown, branches clawing at his cloak. The air was thick with the scent of damp leaves and distant rot. Somewhere ahead, low growls rolled like thunder through the darkness. He didn't slow down. Each step took him deeper into the shadows. Away from the faint light of the village, the alien mother stood at the edge of the street, her heart torn. Between hope and dread, she had seen soldiers go after the monsters before none returned. But something about this human was different. His eyes had no fear in them, only a quiet resolve, deeper in the forest. The human moved like a predator, silent and focused, every snapped twig. Every distant howl told him the hunt had already begun, but he wasn't the prey. His hand brushed the grip of his rifle, checking the familiar weight. If there were 300 of them, then he would have to be faster, sharper, and far more dangerous than they had ever faced. Behind him, the last glimmer of moonlight from the village vanished under the thick canopy. Ahead, faint in the night, came the sound of children crying. It was distant, but clear enough to ignite something in his chest. He picked up his pace, his boots silent on the moss-covered ground. The growls grew louder, closer, joined by the sound of something else hundreds of feet moving through the dark. Circling, he didn't turn back. He didn't even think about the odds. There were 2 children waiting in the dark, and nothing in this forest was going to stop. Him, the alien mother, far behind in the village, stood frozen at the edge of the street in her mind. She could still see the human's back as he walked away into the forest. The wind carried the faintest sound of growls and the rustle of leaves. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to any star that might hear her, because if the human failed, her children were already gone. But if he succeeded, the night swallowed him whole, and the battle for the twins had begun. The forest closed around him like the jaws of a beast. Every tree was thick and twisted, their roots rising like traps in the soil. The air was damp and heavy, carrying the smell of rot and something far worse, the stench of monsters. The human moved slowly now, his eyes scanning the ground. In the soft earth, he saw deep claw marks, wide and sharp enough to slice bone. Some prints were fresh, still holding rainwater. Others overlapped, showing how many had passed. They were heading in the same direction he was going. And somewhere far ahead, he heard a faint, thin sound. Children crying. He crouched beside a patch of broken branches, running his fingers over the splinters. The bark was torn and wet, as if something huge had slammed through only minutes ago. He followed the damage deeper into the forest. The moonlight struggled to break through the thick canopy, but his eyes were sharp. Every shadow, every sound mattered here. A rustle to his left, low and fast. He didn't hesitate. His hand went to his rifle and he turned with steady aim. Out of the underbrush, a small monster lunged, jaws wide, teeth wet with saliva. The rifle cracked. Once the beast dropped without a sound, he dragged its body into the brush, hiding it from sight. The last thing he wanted was the whole horde smelling fresh blood too soon. But it was already too late for quiet. A distant howl echoed, deep and long, answered by two more from different directions. They knew he was here. He kept moving, faster now, weaving through the trees. The trail was easier to follow than he expected. Strips of torn cloth hung from low branches. One piece was pale yellow, soaked with rain. He remembered the alien mother's trembling hands as she described her twins' clothes. This had to be. There's another howl, closer this time, and then two shadows leaping from above. Claws flashing, he rolled to the side, firing twice. The first monster crumpled midair. The second hit the ground snarling. It rushed him, and he stepped into its charge. Slamming his blade into its chest, hot blood sprayed across his arm. He pulled the blade free and moved on without looking back. The deeper he went, the louder the forest became. It wasn't just howls now. It was the thud of heavy feet, the snap of branches, the hiss of breathing. They were hunting him, he counted. The sounds, listening for numbers, at least 20 close by. The rest scattered through the trees, moving toward one place, likely the ruins. The ground began to slope upward, and through the trees he caught glimpses of gray stone. Ancient walls, broken and overgrown, stood like the bones of a dead giant. Moss covered everything, but he could still see strange carvings in the stone. He didn't stop to study them, because now he could hear the twins more clearly. Their cries were desperate, almost drowned by the low rumble of growls surrounding them. Halfway up the slope, a branch snapped behind him. He spun just in time to block a massive claw swipe with his blade. The impact rattled his arm to the shoulder. The monster was larger than the others, with jagged scars across its face. It lunged again, but he stepped aside, letting it hit a tree before it could turn. His blade sliced across its throat. It fell, twitching. As he climbed the rest of the slope, the ruins loomed ahead, their highest wall casting a jagged shadow in the moonlight. From here, he could see movement shapes slipping between broken pillars. Eyes glinting in the dark, he crouched low, using the stone as cover. The monsters weren't just waiting. They were guarding. They knew the value of what they had taken. The human's heart beat steady. He had been in worse situations, on battlefields where the odds were worse than this, but here, it wasn't about survival. It was about two small lives. He checked his rifle, counting the rounds. Not enough to kill them all, but enough to break through. He adjusted the strap of his blade and prepared to move. A sudden sound made him freeze. Not a growl. Not footsteps, something softer. It was a whisper. He turned toward it. And for the briefest moment, he saw a figure. Not a monster, but something else, standing among the trees, watching him. The figure disappeared before he could react. He didn't have time to think about it. The twins' cries cut through the night again, pulling him back to the mission. He moved toward the entrance of the ruins, stepping over shattered stones. A group of 3 monsters blocked the narrow path, crouched low, teeth bared. He didn't wait for them to attack. 3 quick shots. 3 bodies hitting the ground, the noise drew more from deeper inside. Their glowing eyes appearing in the shadows. The human tightened his grip on his rifle and stepped forward. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. The ruins swallowed him in darkness. Behind him, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Ahead, the battle for the twins had just begun. The ruins smelled of damp stone and old death. Every step the human took echoed faintly, like the place itself was listening. The walls around him rose high, cracked and leaning. Their carvings faded with age. Moonlight slipped through holes in the ceiling, spilling pale silver on the floor. In those patches of light, claws and teeth glinted. Waiting, a deep growl rolled through the shadows. The human's eyes adjusted quickly. Monsters moved along the walls, slipping between broken pillars. Their bodies were lean but powerful, with thick limbs and jagged spines down their backs. Yellow eyes followed his every move. They didn't attack all at once. They were circling, testing him. He shifted his stance, keeping his rifle aimed. The first one rushed from the left. Hits speed was inhuman. He fired, the shot echoing through the ruins, and the beast collapsed mid-leap. Another came from behind a pillar. He pivoted, fired again. A third dropped from above, jaws wide. He rolled aside, pulling his blade as it hit the ground. Steel flashed once, and the creature went still. The growls grew louder, sharper. The others had seen how fast he moved, but it didn't scare them. It excited them. More shapes appeared, their claws scraping the stone, their tails lashing the air. The human's mind worked quickly. He stayed in the open. They'd overwhelm him. He backed toward a broken stairway, gaining higher ground from there. He could see the center of the ruins. What he saw made his jaw tighten. In the middle of the clearing, under the tallest broken wall, 2 small shapes were tied to a cracked stone pillar. The twins, their thin arms bound, their faces pale under the moonlight. One was sobbing softly. The other was staring wide-eyed into the darkness. Every sound around them made them flinch. The human's breath slowed. He could reach them, but not without going through the mass of monsters now closing in. He adjusted his rifle and fired into the first wave. 1, 2, 3 went down. But the others didn't hesitate. They came in a rush, claws striking sparks off the stone steps. He moved fast, using the height to his advantage. Every shot counted, every strike with his blade aimed to kill. Blood thick and black splashed across the stones. The smell filled the air, and the monsters roared louder. One beast leaped higher than the rest. Nearly reaching him, he sidestepped, kicked it down, then plunged his blade into its chest. Another came from the side, too close for the rifle. He smashed the butt of the gun into its skull. Hearing the crack of bone, they were relentless for every one that fell. Another took its place. The ruins began to feel smaller, tighter, filled with bodies and rage from the shadows at the far end. A different sound echoed. He turned just in time to see something bigger push its way through the crowd. It stood taller than the others, with thick, bone-like plates across its shoulders and arms. Its eyes glowed a deeper red, its teeth longer. The other monsters pulled back slightly as it stepped forward. This was no ordinary beast. This was a leader. The human steadied himself. The leader's roar shook dust from the ruins. Then it charged, stone cracking under its feet. He fired twice into its chest, but it didn't slow. He dove aside as it slammed into the stairway, breaking a chunk of it away. The impact sent vibrations through the ground. The leader swung one massive claw at him. He ducked, then drove his blade deep into its side. It roared in pain, spinning fast, its tail smashing against the wall. He barely dodged. Feeling the air rush past his face, the fight was brutal. Every blow from the leader could shatter bone. The human's muscles burned, but his movements stayed sharp. He struck again, this time slicing across its neck. It staggered, roaring, blood spraying over the stone floor. Finally, with one last push, he drove the blade straight into its heart. The leader gave a final shudder before collapsing, shaking the ground for a heartbeat. The ruins went silent. The other monsters froze, their eyes flicking between the fallen leader and the human. He knew they would either attack all at once or retreat. But before they could choose, the twins' cries reached him again. That sound cut through everything else. He stepped over the leader's body and moved toward them. The nearest beasts growled, but didn't charge. Some even stepped back, uncertain without their leader. The human kept his rifle ready, his eyes scanning every shadow. He was close now, just a few more steps. The twins looked at him with a mix of fear and hope. He wanted to tell them it would be all right, but there was no time. Then, from somewhere beyond the ruins, another roar split. The night, deeper, louder, more powerful than the one before. The human's eyes narrowed. If this was just the first leader, then the real battle was only beginning. The roar rolled through the ruins like thunder. It was deeper than anything the human had heard that night. Even the other monsters froze, their ears twitching, their tails lowering. A shadow moved at the far edge of the clearing. Then the ground began to shake with each step it took. From between two broken walls, the giant appeared. It was easily 3 times the size of the leader he had just killed. Its body was covered in thick bone armor, sharp ridges jutting from its shoulders and spine. Its face was half hidden by a bony crest, with glowing red eyes burning from beneath. In one clawed hand, it dragged the broken remains of a tree like a weapon. The human's grip tightened on his rifle. He had faced tanks and heavy war machines before. But this was different. This was alive, fast, and built to kill. The giant let out another roar. The sound bouncing off the ancient stone walls, dust rained down from above. The twins whimpered, pressing their faces against the cold pillar. The giant moved first, swinging the tree trunk in a wide arc. The human dove aside, feeling the rush of air as the massive weapons smashed into the ground. Stone cracked and shattered under the blow before the giant could lift it again. The human fired twice into its exposed side. The bullets sparked against the bone plates, barely breaking the surface. He rolled to his feet, moving fast to stay out of reach. The giant followed, each step shaking the earth. It swung again. This time with its claws, the human ducked under the strike, slicing with his blade at the joint of its arm. The steel bit deep where the bone armor thinned. The giant roared in pain. But instead of pulling back, it slammed its other arm forward. The blow caught the human in the side, throwing him across the stones. Pain shot through his ribs, but he forced himself up. He couldn't stay down, not here. Not now. The giant was already charging again. The human ran toward one of the taller broken walls. The giant followed, smashing aside smaller beasts that got in its way. At the last second, the human leaped up onto a pile of fallen stones. The giant swung and missed, its claws tearing through the wall instead. Chunks of stone fell on its head and shoulders, making it stagger. The human didn't waste the chance. He leaped onto its back, driving his blade into the gaps between its plates. The giant roared and thrashed, spinning wildly. It tried to grab him, but he was already climbing higher. Stabbing again and again into its neck, black blood poured down. Its armored shoulders, finally, with one last brutal strike. He buried the blade deep into the base of its skull. The giant gave one final roar before collapsing forward. The ground shook as its massive body hit the stones. Dust rose into the air, and the smaller monsters around the ruins shrieked in panic. Some began to retreat, slipping back into the shadows, but others stayed, snarling. As if waiting for another signal, the human dropped to the ground, his chest heaving. He pulled his blade free. Its edge slick with black blood. The twins were still bound to the pillar. Eyes wide, watching every move, he started toward them. But then he noticed something behind the giant's body, half hidden under rubble. Was a narrow tunnel entrance. A cold draft came from it, carrying a smell even fouler than before. He knew instantly wasn't over. If there were more leaders, more giants, they would be deeper inside. And if the twins had been brought here, there could be other prisoners. 2. He looked at the children, then at the tunnel. The cries he had heard earlier could have been theirs, but maybe not only theirs. He moved to the twins first, cutting the ropes from their wrists. Allah! They clung to him immediately, their small hands gripping his cloak. It's all right, he said softly, though his voice was still rough from the fight. But before he could take them away, a distant sound came from the tunnel. It wasn't a roar, it was hundreds of claws scraping stone. The horde was coming. The human's eyes narrowed if they reached the surface. No one in the village would survive. He couldn't leave yet. He turned to the twins and pointed toward the edge of the ruins. Hide there. Don't move until I come back. They shook their heads, tears welling. But he gave them a look that left no room for argument. He took one last breath, tightening his grip on his blade. Then he stepped over the giant's body. And toward the dark mouth of the tunnel, the sound of claws grew louder with every step. The real war for the twins and for everyone was about to begin. The tunnel yawned before him like the throat of some giant beast. Cold, damp air poured out, carrying the stench of blood, rot, and wet fur. The human tightened his grip on his blade, his rifle slung across his back too close in here for long shots. The sound of claws scraping stone echoed from deep inside, a steady rhythm that made the air vibrate behind him. The twins were crouched behind a wall of fallen stone, their eyes wide and wet. He gave them one last nod before turning into the darkness. The light from the ruins faded fast, swallowed by the black. Only faint glimmers from cracks in the tunnel ceiling lit his way. The floor was uneven, covered in loose stones and bones. He stepped carefully, making no more noise than he had to. Every few steps, he stopped to listen. The claw scrape sound was getting louder. And mixed with it low growls, they knew he was here. The first attack came fast. 2 monsters burst from a side passage, their jaws snapping. The tunnel was too tight for wide swings. So he ducked low, ramming his blade upward into the chest of the first. Hot blood poured over his arm. The second clamped its teeth around his shoulder. Shaking hard, pain exploded down his side, but he gritted his teeth and drove his elbow into its throat. When it let go, he slammed the blade through its neck. He pulled the weapon free and kept moving. Every kill in here was dangerous. The sound would carry down the stone walls like a signal. But there was no way to avoid it now. The tunnel split ahead, 2 paths curving into the dark. From the left came heavy breathing. From the right, faint cries. He didn't hesitate. He went right. The cries grew louder with every step. But so did the monsters, their growls closing in behind him. He quickened his pace, the tunnel twisting tighter. The air felt thicker here, heavy with heat. It opened suddenly into a wider chamber lit by faint blue crystals in the walls. And there, in the center, were the twins still bound, chained to a pillar of black stone. But his heart sank. They weren't alone. A ring of at least 20 monsters surrounded them, crouched low, eyes glowing, the moment he stepped into the light. They all turned toward him. The largest hissed, its claws scraping the floor. Then they came. The fight was chaos. Teeth and claws flashed from every side. He moved like a shadow, striking fast and hard. Every motion meant to kill. One leaped for his throat. He ducked and slashed, splitting it open. Another slammed into his back, sending him stumbling. He rolled, stabbing upward into its ribs. Two more tried to block his path to the twins. He cut them down with brutal efficiency. But his breathing was growing heavy. The last monster in the ring lunged. He caught it by the jaw, twisting its head with a sickening crack. It fell, and he dropped to one knee beside the twins. Their faces were pale, their wrists raw from struggling against the chains. He sliced through the bindings, pulling them free. "On my back now," he ordered. They clung to him instantly, wrapping small arms around his neck. But before he could leave, a roar filled the chamber. From the shadows of a deeper tunnel, more monsters poured in. The sound of claws scraping stone grew to a deafening chorus. There were too many dozens, maybe more. The only way out was the tunnel he had come from, and now it was full of death. He set the twins down behind a fallen slab of rock. "Stay there, no matter what," he told them. Then he stepped into the center of the chamber. The monsters advanced slowly, their growls echoing. He planted his feet and raised his blade. If they wanted him, they'd have to go through steel. The first wave hit like a flood. Claws tore at his arms. Teeth snapped at his throat. He moved without thinking, each strike faster than the last. The chamber floor became slick with black blood. Still they came. His arms burned, his ribs ached, but he didn't stop. Every time he thought they would overwhelm him, he forced himself to push harder. One by one, they fell, until the last dropped at his feet. Silence, except for the twins' sobs. He turned toward them, his chest heaving, his hands shaking from exhaustion. They ran to him, clinging to his legs. He scooped them up, one on each side, and started back toward the ruins. But as they reached the tunnel mouth, another sound rose from the depths, louder, heavier. A sound that didn't belong to any of the monsters he had faced so far. The twins looked up at him, fear flooding their eyes. He didn't tell them it would be all right, not yet, because he wasn't sure what was coming next. The tunnel mouth shook with each step of whatever was coming. It was not the fast, darting movement of the smaller monsters. It was slow, heavy, deliberate. Each impact rattled the stones under the humans' boots. The twins clung to him tighter, their tiny hands gripping his cloak. A deep, rumbling growl rolled out of the darkness. The humans set the twins down behind a jagged slab of fallen stone. "Stay low, don't move, no matter what you hear," he told them. Their eyes were wide, but they nodded. He turned back toward the blackness of the tunnel, gripping his blade in one hand, rifle in the other. From the shadows, the shape emerged. It was massive, even larger than the bone-plated giant he had fought before. But this one was different. Its body was leaner but covered in spiked ridges, its long limbs ending in claws like scythes. Its eyes burned with a sickly green light. And it moved with a predator's patience, slowly circling him. The human kept his breathing steady. He had no illusions. This was the final challenge. The monster let out a low hiss, then lunged with terrifying speed. He dove to the side, the claws slicing the air where his head had been. The impact of the strike shattered a chunk of stone, sending fragments flying. He came up swinging his blade in a wide arc. The steel bit into the beast's side, but it barely slowed. It spun, one claw slamming into his rifle and knocking it from his grip. The weapon skidded across the floor, too far to grab. Now it was blade against claws. They circled, each waiting for the other to make a mistake. The human feinted left, then slashed right. The monster dodged, its tail whipping. Around like a whip, it struck his leg, nearly knocking him off balance. Pain flared, but he pushed through it, stepping in close to slash again. Black blood splattered the stones, the monster roared, the sound shaking the tunnel walls from deeper inside. More growls echoed. Shadows flickered at the edges of the chamber smaller. Monsters were gathering. If they joined the fight now, it would be over. The human knew he had to finish this before they arrived. The beast lunged again, jaws wide. He sidestepped, slamming his shoulder into its chest. The impact staggered it just enough for him to drive the blade into its throat. It howled, thrashing violently. He held on, twisting the blade deeper. The monster slammed him against the wall, the force knocking the breath from his lungs. Stars danced in his vision, but he refused to let go. Finally, with one last heave, the beast collapsed, its claws scraping stone as it fell. The human pulled his blade free and stumbled back, breathing hard. But there was no time to rest. The smaller monsters poured into the tunnel, their eyes glowing, their growls filling the air. He glanced at the twins, still hiding behind the slab of stone. They were safe for now, but only if he could hold the line. He planted his feet in the center of the passage. The monsters came in. A wave, he met them head on. Every strike precise, every step measured. His blade flashed in the dim light, cutting down one after another. Claws raked his arms. Teeth tore at his cloak. Blood, both his and theirs, spattered the floor. But he didn't back down. Every time one fell, he stepped forward, forcing them back toward the deeper tunnels. The pile of bodies grew, but so did the exhaustion in his muscles. Still, he fought. Because stopping meant death for the children, one monster broke through, heading for the twins. He saw it and moved without thinking, throwing himself between them. His blade sank in two, its chest dropping at inches from the children. The twins clung to each other, eyes full of terror. Almost over, he said, though he wasn't sure if it was for them or for himself. At last, the last beast fell, its body hitting the ground with a dull thud. The tunnel went quiet. Only the sound of his ragged breathing filled the space. He wiped the blade clean on a fallen monster's hide, then sheathed it. The twins rushed to him, hugging his legs so tightly he could barely move. He lifted them both into his arms. They were shaking, but alive, and so was he for now. They began the long walk back toward the ruins. The air was heavy with the smell of blood and the silence of victory, but deep down, the human knew something. This was not just a rescue. This was the kind of night that would change everything. The ruins were quiet when the humans stepped out of the tunnel. The twin moons hung low now, casting pale silver over the broken walls. The air was cold, carrying the faint smell of blood and stone in his arms. The twins were silent, their heads resting against his shoulders. They were exhausted, but safe. He crossed the clearing where so many monsters had fallen. Their bodies lay scattered like dark shadows in the moonlight. Every step was slow, his muscles aching from the fight, but he kept going, never loosening his hold on the children. As he reached the edge of the ruins, a voice cried out. It was the alien mother, running toward him. Her long violet hair streamed behind her, her golden eyes wide with disbelief. She stumbled over loose stones in her rush to reach them. When she saw the twins in his arms, she fell to her knees. Covering her mouth with shaking hands, the children reached for her at once. He set them down gently, and they ran into her arms. She clutched them tightly, tears falling freely. Her voice broke as she whispered their names over and over. The twins clung to her, their small hands tangled in her hair. The village had begun to gather behind her, faces peeked from behind doors. Then more people stepped out into the moonlight. They looked at the human, then at the bodies in the ruins. Whispers spread quickly. He had gone into the forest alone, faced the horde, and returned, alive and with the children. The alien mother rose slowly. Still holding her twins, she walked to the human, her steps unsteady but full of purpose. For a moment, she just looked at him, as if trying to understand how he had done it. Then she reached into the folds of her clothing and pulled out a small object. It was a pendant, glowing faintly with a soft blue light. "This is the heartstone of my family," she said quietly. "It has been passed from mother to daughter for generations. It is the most valuable thing I own. It is yours now." He looked at the pendant but didn't reach for it. "You don't need to give me anything," he said, but she shook her head, her voice trembling. "You gave me everything. You gave me back my children. Without you, they would be gone. This stone is not enough to repay that, but it is all I have." Slowly, he accepted the pendant. It was warm in his hand, almost alive. The twins stepped forward, each holding one of his hands. One of them whispered, "Don't go." The words were soft, but they hit him harder than any blow he had taken that night. The alien mother glanced at the children, then back at him. Her next words surprised everyone. "You could stay. You would have a place here, not as a guest, but as family." The villagers murmured in shock. Some looked at each other, uncertain. But no one spoke against her. They had seen what he had done. They knew no one else could have survived what he had faced. The human looked at the mother, then at the twins. He thought about the long, empty roads he had walked alone. The battles where there had been no one waiting for him afterward. Here, there were faces that wanted him to stay. Hands that would reach for him when he returned from the field. A home he had not realized he had been missing. Finally, he nodded once. The twins smiled through their tears. The alien mother's shoulders relaxed for the first time since he had met her. The villagers began to step forward, offering food, blankets, and quiet words of welcome. The ruins behind them were still littered with the remains of monsters. But the night no longer felt dangerous. It felt like the beginning of something new. Later, as the village slept and the fires burned low, the human sat outside, the heartstone in his hand. The twins were curled up beside him, already dreaming. The alien mother sat nearby, her eyes watching the stars. No one spoke. There was no need. The forest beyond the walls was still and silent. For the first time in years, it seemed at peace, and in the heart of the village, so was he. Because the battle was over, but the life ahead of him had just begun.